The hardest part about surfing is just getting the reps. Small wave surfing, getting to that really high level is, I would argue, harder than getting to a proficient level in big waves. I remember just looking up and the roof of the wave is like almost at my head. It was just like, oh, this is about to be really bad. I'm gonna get clocked in the head on this 20-footer and be flipping through the barrel and pushed down on my front foot and pretty much airdropped inside of the barrel. That was definitely a wave that'll probably stick out in my mind forever.
Do you struggle with your paddle power? Well, I can go months without surfing and roll to pumping waves and surf 3-hour sessions multiple times a day after day after day by using the Basis Paddle Trainer. It was a total game changer for me, and it can be for you too. These things actually work, unlike elastic resistance bands. You can train your paddling anytime, anywhere, so you can catch more waves and have more fun. Just 10 to 20 minutes a couple times a week, and you're gonna be in insane paddle shape. Right? So remember, the key progression is more waves, and the key to more waves is more paddle power. Check it out at surfbasis.com. That's surfbasis.com. You're gonna be stoked.
All right, welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. Very excited because we got Ridge Lenny, who's a pro that's constantly experimenting and pushing the limits, rips in everything from small waves to giant waves at Jaws. Brother and tow partners, probably one of the most famous surfers in the world, Kai Lenny, who he shares a sick podcast that you guys all got to check out, Lenny Bros. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your show. I really like the stuff you've been doing. It's very insightful.
Sick. Well, we're going to get into all sorts of stuff, all the experimental things you guys are constantly doing, your training, technique. I know that you've been going through a revamp on your technique, what it's like surfing big waves, mental aspects as well. But first, what I want to start off is, I remember grabbing dinner with you and Kai a while back after the launch of his book, Big Wave Surfer, which you guys should all check out as well. And I think one thing that really struck me about it was just like how open-minded and creative you guys were in terms of your approach to surfing and training and just like really life in general, right? You guys like have this very out-of-the-box approach to surfing, and it obviously shows. You guys are like, there's this one clip where you're like ripping on a medium-sized waves on and even in small waves at the wave pool on tow boards, and you guys are doing like flips and crazy shit like that. Like, tell us about that. What was the intention there?
I don't know. For us, it's always just been pure fun. I think that's something that's been a huge hallmark of Kai's career, and my career, it started a bit later. It's kind of followed the same trajectory, but not really being so worried about maybe what people think is cool or trying to really double down on the core stuff. Obviously, Kai and I have been trying to develop our, traditional surfing approach for a long time. And that's a huge part of our careers, but also just throwing on the straps and not taking the sport too seriously and just having a good time and doing flips. It's just really fun. It's of course it's cheating. You're wearing foot straps, but it's just, once you do it, it's like, oh, it's pretty fun to just do a flip on every wave. It's all about just having a good time, I think.
Yeah, that's so crazy. It looks so fun, but it also in some ways looks scary because you're like your foot is strapped in on. I guess you guys are eating it in giant waves on tow board, so that's not really that scary, relatively speaking. But like just the way you guys are somersaulting and whatnot, I'm like, damn, that just looks like a broken ankle or something just waiting to happen. I don't know. Is it risky or is it just like actually pretty chill?
That's what a lot of people say. They're like, we always try to get other pro surfers to try it just to see what they would do with it, especially guys that are really gnarly at airs already. And they're always worried about like, what about your knee? What about your ankle? And the thing with the straps is that I think it's a lot more safe, especially if you set up your straps properly. There's, what we like to do is have them pretty narrow around your foot and sort of have a high bridge. So you could lock your foot in, but if you straighten it out, you could get out pretty easily. But the main thing is when you're going to fall, say you're doing a flip or a rotation, you're coming in weird, just stay in the straps. It's similar to snowboarding, let the board take the brunt of the impact, and a lot of that energy gets instantly dispersed. I felt like my gnarliest sort of experiences with doing airs have been strapless, where you land kind of wrong, foot slips off, and you're doing the splits. And that happens less with the tow board because you were literally strapped to it. So in a way, it can be really dangerous, but I have found that it can be safer in some regards. But it's, I mean,
Yeah.
anything where you're flying into the flats 15 feet in the air, it's probably not the safest thing you can do.
Yeah, and like somersaulting while you're doing, you got like this
Yeah.
crazy momentum. But I mean, I actually kind of hear you on that point about your feet being strapped in. Like one of my really good homies, um, he went for an air and then he landed on the fin with his foot and like cut it open. It was legit like
Oh,
squirting blood. And then he, and it was so gnarly because like it happened to him when he was back home on Oahu. And then he was out of the water for like a month, and then like the first time he surfed again for the after that injury, like literally the same thing happened and cut his other foot open.
no.
And it's just
Oh,
like, you know anyway, there's just always crazy shit that might happen.
yeah,
So
100%.
let me ask you about this. Like, does it allow you to, like, what do you learn anything from it? Is it just like pure fun, or does it allow you to like experiment, like just in terms of your feel of the board, and do things you normally wouldn't? Like, has it enhanced your surfing at all, I guess is the question.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the hardest part about surfing, especially on a traditional board, is just getting the reps. It's one thing to get a really good section on a strapless board, but you get in the air, and if you're learning, it's a really foreign feeling when you're spinning backwards and, trying to figure out that air awareness. So having the straps where you could do an air pretty much on every single wave, it allows you to really get comfortable with what it feels like to be backwards spinning, going upside down. And when you get back on the strapless board, it feels a lot more like you're at home in the air. And I've found that I've gotten a lot better with my strapless airs after spending so much time with the straps. So I think it can only help you. It's a bit of a different technique. With the straps, you approach it more like a snowboard versus strapless on a traditional surfboard. It's more like the approach is more like a skateboarding ollie, where you slide your front foot forward and it's sort of that weight shift from the back to the front. On the toe board, you could be more centered and planted and sort of carve off the lip. So it's a little bit different, but as far as the air awareness, that's where it really comes into play. Like doing a full rotation on straps is obviously really easy, but it teaches you how to have proper form and really spot your landing when you're coming around. And I've found that it's only helped really.
Right, right, that makes total sense, right? It's like it just takes one element, like keeping the board under your feet, out of the equation so you can
Oh
focus on
yeah.
these other things. And I'm sure it's all about the reps, and that's probably the hardest thing with airs, right? Like, I mean, I remember interviewing Matt Miola, and he's just like, dude, like hunting for the right section like can be so, he'll spend like an entire session just hunting for the right section, and he just doesn't get it. He's like bummed. But like, I guess with straps, like you don't have to worry about the wind and all that. You're just like, I'm going, right? Huh.
Yeah, 100%. Especially here on Maui, it's known as one of the best airwaves ever, but or air locations. You have guys like Matt and Albie that are just doing crazy things, but it's also really difficult. The sections are really big and burly, and most of the time you can only go left. We get Kona winds where you can do airs going right, and I've felt like learning airs on a traditional board. I couldn't do any airs until I moved off the island and went to California,
Huh.
where you could just surf a closeout beach break, take a couple pumps and try an air on a lot of waves. Most of the waves you get in the session, and you just bog the whole time struggling, and then just needs to come around one time, and then you kind of remember the feeling. So I didn't learn how to do airs until I was in college, and since then it was a lot easier to come back to Hawaii with these sort of bigger, scarier sections and feel a little bit more comfortable.
Oh, that's fascinating. Huh. You didn't learn how to do airs until you went to college in California. Yeah, because
Yeah.
coming from Maui, you'd just be like, oh yeah, but I mean, yeah, it does look super gnarly. The wave does look really tricky. And if you have these giant sections coming at you, that's super, super intimidating.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Huh. So what other kinds of, things are, because I see you guys dabbling with everything like windsurfing, foiling, like kites, stand up, how does that, you're exposed to such like diverse forms of water sports. I mean, I guess you guys are like watermen, right? Like you're not just, I'm just a core surfer. I'm just doing everything. I'm in the water. Like, is that also just the impulse of like having fun? Is it I mean, I would imagine it would just open so many things up because you're not, I mean, when the wind's one way you can go windsurfing and you can foil and stand up. Like, is that the impetus, is just to like just do more things and have more fun?
Oh, 100%. Especially if you've ever been to Maui, it's great for surfing in the winter. We have a ton of days. You can pretty much surf every day at Hokipa and you're going to have a decent time, but summer times can be brutal. Like we're
Mhm.
pretty blocked for south swells and the wind is just nuking. So if you don't have an alternate sport, you either got to leave the island or you're going to be insanely bored. So the foiling, the windsurfing, the kiting, those sports really come into play in the summertime and sort of give you the same rush that maybe surfing bigger waves would give you. So I think that's how it started. But we've found that there's so much really good cross training by doing these sports. Say with windsurfing, you're going really fast and you're skipping over the water on this board. And it turns out that's a really similar sensation to being on a gun or a towboard on a really big wave where you're skipping over these chops and it gets you comfortable with it. Or let's say, the downwind foiling. It's an insane quad workout. But it's really fun. So it ends up sort of helping you for when winter comes around. You don't really feel like you're rusty and trying to get back into the groove of things when the waves do get big again. So I think it's
Wow.
a little bit of both, but it's mainly about the fun. Like if it wasn't fun, we would
Right.
definitely wouldn't be doing it.
Right. I mean, all of that looks so fun. All right. So there's no way I'm going to be able to pick up like 4 additional sports. Like you guys are like experts in like 5 sports or whatever. Like if like an everyday surfer was going to pick one additional, water sport to complement their surfing, which one would you suggest them?
I'd say the sport that has had the biggest effect on people's surfing is foiling. And for a really good reason is that with foiling you really have to be able to turn and kind of navigate the wave. You have to have really good technique. Your back knee has to be tucked in. You have to open up your shoulders, turn with your hips, and that's the only way you're going to turn it. Surfing, you could kind of cheat it where start turning, you could kind of just lean, and you may not have the right proper form to go to that next level, but you could make it work. Foiling, you can't make it work. And I've seen guys, some of my friends that I went to college with, where they're surfing, there was a lot of issues with their technique and their style that would only allow them to get so good in surfing. And then they'd go off on this tangent of learning how to foil, and they may not have surfed for years.
Hmm.
And then I see them again surfing again, and it's like, wow, this guy has really good style, and it looks like they've been surfing for forever. And it's just the fact of how you ride a foil board that makes you have this good style. It's actually quite remarkable. People that you thought their style was far gone, they're 20 years old, been surfing this way for their whole life, and then they foil for a couple years, and it's like a night and day difference. It's pretty
Wow.
crazy. I've seen it
Oh,
multiple times.
whoa. Wow. I mean, if that's not a good endorsement to take up foiling, then I don't know what is. That sounds, I mean, plus it just looks so fun, right? Like you basically get to surf when like the waves are like tiny, because that's usually when you're foiling, right? Like when the waves
Oh
are
yeah,
smaller, you're trying to just ride the energy, like, before it breaks, right? And you're just riding
yeah.
these little, I mean, I would imagine it would just also teach you to like use and just have a better understanding of the wave's energy as well, because you're like surfing this different part of the wave.
For sure.
That sounds super
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, the good
Oh,
thing about it too is you don't have to be near other surfers. I mean, if you're near other surfers trying to foil, then there's something wrong with you. You might hurt yourself or someone else. But you
right.
could go downwind. You could go to that spot that no one would ever look at and be by yourself and have a great time. But yeah, you're totally right. It really teaches you not only the technique but how to read waves, because you're pretty much riding almost the whole time. Your quads are insanely jacked after it because you're just pumping the whole time. And yeah, that is the best cross training you could possibly have. It'll fix your style automatically and you'll have fun doing it. You could think about it in your head all the time, be like, okay, when I'm on this wave, I'm going to turn my shoulder, do whatever. But if you only get 3 waves in a session, you're standing up for 10 seconds. It's pretty hard to make pretty big developments versus foiling where you're riding most of the time. You're going to be able to figure this stuff out a lot more intuitively. And when you go back to surfing, your body's just going to do what it's used to doing from foiling. And
Wow.
you'll see your style go through the roof. It's crazy.
Damn. All right. I guess I'm getting a foil. You
Yeah, get
sold
on
me.
it.
I guess that's it. Cool. Well, So what other kind of training are you guys doing? Like I'm sure there's all sorts of funky stuff like, but like beyond like cross training with a different sport, like is there anything you guys are doing that, you know, people would be like, "Oh, that's interesting," or anything that's really helped you, I guess, as well? I mean, not even what's interesting, but what has really helped you, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose for big waves, the gym training is pretty important. I think just injury prevention's huge. We do a lot of squats and sort of I don't know if you've ever seen like the knees over toes approach to working out. It's a little bit controversial, but it really like the goal is to build up a lot of muscle around your knees to kind of give it a brace. You know, it's better than wearing a real life brace. If your muscles can grow around it and make your knee really strong, when something goes wrong, say your foot gets stuck in the foot strap and your leg gets jammed, you know, all your ligaments aren't just going to snap. You know, you have muscles that protect it. So that's a huge part of it, is just the strength conditioning. And we spend a good amount of time in the summer, pretty much 5 days a week, grinding in the gym, you know, doing squats and doing all that. And then also implementing sort of the breath hold training into it. And the way we breath hold trains different than, say, I think this might be a common misconception. We train really different than what a freediver would train like. You know, their goal is to get their heart rate as like slow as possible, calm everything down, calm down the nervous system, and then they do these really big breathe ups, you know, for minutes at a time, and then they hold their breath. With big wave surfing, we don't really have that luxury of doing breathe ups or being able to get our heart rate down. So you want to put yourself in the situation where you get your heart rate really high, you do jumping jacks, and then go underwater and be getting thrashed around or swimming as fast as you can. And if you could hold your breath for a minute after doing that, you're in a good shape. So that's kind of the underwater training we do. But yeah, that aspect has become more and more important as we've got older. Is just the maintenance and making sure that we get home safe in the big waves for sure.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, you guys are in, you know, super gnarly situations, and I'm definitely going to ask about the big wave stuff as well. Yeah, because I interviewed Tom Carroll and Mark Hamill, and they were talking about breath work. They have this program called Breath Work for Surfers, and it's all about that. You know, very similar, where you're like, it's a meditation, it's breath work, but then they're also putting themselves in gnarly situations and like exercising to get their heart rate up. And it sounds like a lot of it is just like acclimating your body and your mind to what it's like to be in those situations. So you encounter it in another situation, you're like, oh, I've been here. So you feel comfortable in that.
Yeah, that's all it is, really. I mean, the breath holds aren't even that long, especially nowadays. We have the inflation, but it's the mental side of it. You know, I've seen people that can hold their breath for 5 minutes, insane free divers, but they're not used to sort of the mental stress that goes into getting smoked by a big wave, and you know they pretty much go back to sort of a baseline breath hold. You know, so it is getting comfortable with that stress. And if you could just sort of been like the more years you spend in big waves too, you know what to expect when you fall, and it gets a little bit easier. I mean, there's still the
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty, and it's really scary, but yeah, you're totally right. And just simulating the mental stress is a good way to train for sure.
Yeah. Well, I have this as a question. We're just going to get into it. Like, tell us about the wave of your life. That seemed like an insane one.
Which one?
There was
The
a there's a barrel at Jaws. Well, there's actually two Jaws waves that I want to ask you about. One Jaws wave I want to ask you about is getting barreled with your brother
Oh yeah.
both of you guys getting barreled. But then there was this other one where you're like, oh, this was the wave of your life, and like you're like so deep, and like I think you stalled in it or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I've had. I could say I have three different waves in my life, and we
Oh,
can go into that one specifically because that was
okay.
probably the first. But that one, the double barrel of Kai, is really special. It wasn't. It was a smaller wave, but just being in a barrel with your brother and filming it was super special. And then just a few weeks ago, I got my first proper paddle in barrel. I didn't make it, but I think it'll still be a pretty memorable wave. But yeah, that first one, I remember I was pretty much that winter. It was just a ton of towing, and I was getting to the point where I was just watching my brother get so many barrels, and I was so frustrated. I'm like, I keep outrunning these waves. I need to just fully commit on one. I don't care if I fall. And that particular wave, Kai's so good at reading the waves that when he was towing me in, he turned around and gave me this sign, which means this thing's going to barrel. If you want, you should stall. And then once I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is my chance. I'm just going to put the blinders on and go as deep as possible. So I just cranked a big cutback to get deep. And the hard part with towing Jaws is that it's so easy to outrun the wave. I mean, you see it in most of the clips you see, is that you're going so fast and you get in the wave so early. And visually, people that have surfed Jaws know this, but it may not be super clear if you're just watching clips. You look like you're so much deeper than you are when you're dropping in on these waves, because the wall stretches forever. And then when it hits the West Bowl, it compresses and makes it makeable. So to get barreled, you have to be thinking you're pulling into the left pretty much. It has to look like a straight closeout. And after I came around on that cutback and turned around and I saw the peak was just so far away. And once I got to it, I was even like, I'm not even deep enough still. Like, I have to make sure I take advantage of this opportunity, because if I kick out and I tell my brother I barrel dodged it, he's gonna be pissed, because he would have been like, oh, I would have gotten drained on that thing. What are you doing? That's just the level that he's at. So I just stomped on my tail, and then I didn't realize, but there was so much water sucking up. I just went so high up on it. And I remember just looking up, and the roof of the wave is like almost at my head. And it was just one of those moments where I was just like, oh, this is about to be really bad. I'm going to get clocked in the head on this 20-footer and be flipping through the barrel, and pushed down on my front foot and pretty much airdropped inside of the barrel. And when I came out, I was like, geez, that was, I wasn't even that psyched in the moment. I was just like, that was really intense. That was really gnarly. And it was almost, I was almost freaked out by it for a while. And then when we got home, we got sent the clip from the front on angle, and we saw how deep I was, and Kai and I were both tripping. We were like, dang, that was a crazy one. And it was really scary, but that was definitely a wave that'll probably stick out in my mind forever.
Oh my God. I just can't even imagine. I mean, this is something like most surfers can't even like fathom, like basically it looked like, I saw that clip, it looked like you were backdooring, the wave at Jaws. Like most surfers are like, oh, I'm going to take off behind the peak to try to get barreled on like a head high double overhead wave, and you're still like pulling back and you're like, oh man, this looks gnarly. But then like to do it on like a 20-foot wave, like, and then to be like, okay, I'm in the barrel, but I'm not deep enough, so I'm going to stall. And if I fuck this up, I'm just going to get tossed. Like, I can't even imagine what that's like. That's so gnarly,
It's almost so intense that I've had, like, the most recent wave I had out there paddling where I got barreled, it was almost like I blacked out during it. And you're really just going off of pure survival instinct. I don't know if your brain just dumps so much adrenaline that it puts you in that mode. But on that particular wave, someone had bailed their board and it went over the top of me in the barrel. It was the craziest view ever. And right after the wave, I completely forgot that happened. I paddled back out, and Tori Meister was like, dude, how was that board that went over you? Did that like mess up your line? And at first I was like, what are you talking about?
That's insane.
And then it instantly came back to me, the memory clear as day. And I was like, holy crap, I totally forgot that happened. And a lot of times that's the mode that you go into. You're really just going on autopilot. Like, it's almost like the conscious part of your brain turns off in a way, and you go to your instincts, which honestly really helps you in a lot of situations because it makes you not overthink it. You just go on pure instinct at that point.
Right. Wow. Dude, paddling Jaws just sounds so freaking gnarly. That's insane. I mean, so tell us about like your transition in paddling more. Like, how has that been? Like, psychologically, is that the hardest part, or is it because the wave at this point, right? But I guess you're trying to take off in a different position. What's that like though?
Yeah, I mean, it just turned out the first few seasons I had at Jaws, I've always wanted to paddle it. Obviously, that's sort of the premier way to ride the wave. I mean, it's like the ultimate test. It's pretty sick if you could paddle in and get a good barrel. But it just turned out the first few winters, there just wasn't really a lot of paddle days. And the days there were, I was either off island or sick. So I just didn't get a ton of reps. I feel like this year was the first year I could really lock into more focusing on paddling. But the good thing is that I feel like I've gotten really used to understanding what the wave's going to do. And paddling, it's all about choosing which wave to go on. You don't want to be going on the ones that are going to close out or land on you or have that kink and collapse. And just from all the years of towing and seeing hundreds and hundreds of waves, I kind of got the feel for it where now I feel like if I'm sitting out the back and I see a wave coming in a certain way, I can just commit full on and not be second guessing, what the wave is going to do. I mean, it'll still surprise you, but just having that comfortability. And then, but yeah, it's terrifying. To anybody that says it's not terrifying to paddle that wave is lying. It's really intense, and you have to be so much more under it than you think. It just takes a ton of commitment, but it's a fun journey. It really tests you, and once you get a good one, it gives you a lot of confidence, especially if you go back to towing. It feels way less scary.
That's funny. If towing doesn't feel scary, then that says something. Well, so I mean, paddling, like, are you doing additional training to paddle jaws? I mean, I would imagine, like, are you paddle training to, because I would imagine paddling into a 20-foot wave is going to be hard. Like, what are you doing there?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to paddle. It requires you to paddle like twice as fast as you would for a normal wave. You'd be in smaller waves, but luckily our newer paddling guns, I don't know, maybe you could put up a picture of the board, but they really thicken the nose. It's almost like they look like a prone paddle board. So we're lucky that they paddle really, really good. As far as training, I feel like just normal surfing helps a lot, just developing those paddle muscles. But it's more so when you stand up and getting used to being on a really big board. That's what a lot of people, the big learning curve is being on such a big board, going that fast on a wave. And I think Kai and I, an advantage we've had growing up is that we did the SUP stuff a lot in bigger waves. The smallest board you ride is maybe a 7.3 or something like that. So I think we've gotten really used to what it feels like to be on a big board and having a big, like, thick rail, long rail line, and just being comfortable with that. And I think that's helped us a lot. It's obviously helped Kai. I mean, can do snaps on these giant guns, and he's one of the few people that can do that. So it definitely helps. But as far as just paddling, yeah, you do have to paddle faster, but the boards are so good that it's more about like the commitment.
Yeah.
You have to really, if you're not, sometimes you see people paddling jaws and it's almost like they want to half paddle and be at the top of the wave. And then if it lets them in, then they'll go, because that way you can pull back at any time and not get sucked over. But if you really want to catch the wave properly, you have to be sort of paddling at the bottom and then you stand up mid face. And it's an easier drop. Like, it's way less scary. You'll not get pitched, but you can't pull back. If you try to pull back, you're going over with it. So it's sort of that balance where you want the comfort to be able to get out, but it's an easier drop if you really commit. And that's probably more what it's about versus just the pure paddle power. It's putting yourself in that position that's really scary, but ends up making it easier. So it's kind of a oxymoron in a way.
That's so gnarly. I can't even imagine. I really can't imagine. And I mean, like, what does it actually feel like to get, to eat it on one of those waves? Like, how gnarly is it?
Like I was saying before, it's almost like you black out in a way. It's so violent, and it's such I don't know, for anybody that's ever been in a, like, God forbid, a car accident, it's the same sort of thing where it almost feels surreal. Like, it's like your brain goes into this weird mode where it doesn't even feel like it's happening to you. It's almost like there's white noise or something. It's really strange to describe. Like, I've had it where I do like a million flips down the wave and I'm getting smoked, and you almost aren't conscious you're doing that. It just feels like something's happening to you. It's just really fast and violent. I'd say the scariest thing is, like, not the maybe initial impact, but when you're slowly getting sucked over, and that's when your mind sort of catches up with what's happening, and you're like, oh no, this is like, it's gonna be really bad. And then you're just waiting for that explosion, and then you truly get pounded. But it's pretty funny where your brain goes in these types of situations. It kind of just goes to just pure survival. It's almost like you're tapping into that, ancient survival thing. If you're getting attacked by a tiger or something, that's probably what it would feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's insane. I mean, I guess you guys have the experience out there where you can feel comfortable doing that and pushing it in that way. It's super rad to see all that. Well, big wave surfing is insane. Let's transition. Let's talk a little bit about, some of the, regular size surfing, like your small and medium size surfing? I know you just came back. We were just chatting earlier. You came back from Oahu, and like you were talking about how you're beginning to rethink your technique. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. First of all, small wave surfing, getting to that really high level is, I would argue, harder than getting to a proficient level in big waves.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, just simply because the level is just so high, and it's so much really minute movements that make a big difference. It's similar to a golf swing. You know, you could change one little thing, and it could either ruin your swing or make it way better. And it's a super similar thing. And the way I've kind of experienced it is sometimes I feel like I'll get a lot of confidence, being like, okay, I'm on a good roll, I'm surfing good, and then I hit a roadblock where maybe there was something wrong with my technique that only let me get to a certain level, and you hit a ceiling. And it's almost like with an NBA team where you have to go into a rebuild phase.
Hmm.
You know, to get to the higher level, you have to go backwards, and it's really can be discouraging to go backwards to surf, you know, less good as before, but you're having to change something fundamental
Hmm.
about your surfing. And once you're done with that rebuild, then you get to the next level, and then you hit the ceiling, and then you have to kind of go back and rethink it. And then I kind of was going through that the past couple weeks, simply with, and it all had to do with my left arm, weirdly
Huh.
enough, and just torquing it around. I think before I would always sort of keep it close to my body, and it would close my shoulders and therefore close my hips. And being with Doug, he's sort of the king of open up that shoulder, bring that front arm high. A lot of people have the I feel like the inclination to go high with their back arm for some reason, and I would
Right.
sometimes do that. And it's such a weird feeling. It feels so wrong to
Hmm.
change something like that in your surfing. It could be small, but it you get so used to doing, like, say, a cutback a certain way, to change
Yeah.
it feels like you're just sucking. And then
Right.
um, so that was great having Doug give me some of that insight. And then just, was it yesterday? 2 days ago, I was out on the jet ski with Cody Young, and my girlfriend was filming from the ski. And he really, and I don't know if you know Cody Young, but he's one of the best surfers coming out of Maui. Insanely good technique. And I'm like, Cody, after every wave, just tell me how it looks, or what I can change. And having that instant feedback where I'd ride a wave and he'd be in front on the jet ski, and he's like, okay, remember to keep that arm up. And I'd be like, I feel like I look ridiculous. Like, it probably
Yeah.
looks so dumb. And then my girlfriend would show me the video, and I'd be like, oh wow, that looks way better. And then I through the session I wrapped my head around how it felt, and I got more used to it. Now I feel like when I go surfing, hopefully, I haven't gone surfing since that session, but hopefully that'll become more second nature, where I keep my arm up on that cutback. So
Oh,
things like that, it is sort of a step by step thing, and it can be so discouraging. Sometimes you think you're ripping, and you see a video, and you're like, gosh, I'm going backwards, I'm getting worse. But that's just
yeah.
it's a part of the process, and that's what makes surfing insanely frustrating, but also really rewarding at the same time.
Right. Wow. That's interesting. You know, it's so funny because I remember interviewing Parker Coffin, and part of what I think makes his style so sick is his lead arm. It just is like so loose, and he just like lets it dangle, and he doesn't raise it as well. And I think that really quiet front arm, kind of almost like Tom Curran, although Tom, when he does his turn, he does lift his arm, but like it's part of what makes his style so unique, Parker's style, and what I like about his style. But when we were talking about it and I asked him about it, he was actually like, yeah, this is actually something I'm kind of working on though. And he was like, I'm actually trying to gain more like awareness of it and use it more. And that's so funny though, that, you know, for you, you're like, this is an aspect of your surfing that you think is limiting you in a little way. And that's the same thing Parker said, you know, and this is now something you're focused on. And it sounds like it's unlocked something for you.
Yeah, and just a note on the arm technique. I mean, there's some surfers, say like John, where it looks like they're doing nothing with their arms. But essentially, when you're thinking about how you're moving your arms, it's not just about the arm placement. It's about how it rotates your hips. Just like in most sports, all the power you have comes from your hips, and the arm position is a great way to sort of lead your hips. So it's not just about the arms. So guys like
Right.
that are really good at, you know, that hip rotation, like the Parker Coffins, John. If you look, they're getting that same torque out of their hips, but they're so good and they're so used to doing that, they don't necessarily need to lead with their arms. So for me, it on the surface, it may look like it's a problem with my arm position, but it's really was a problem with my hip rotation.
For
And
sure.
so that's the core of everything. It's not so much about the arms, but if you get powerful torque out of your hips, that's when you see those guys are able to do those, Mick Fanning really tight carves. It's not because of anything doing with his arms. His arms are just leading him, but
Right.
that torque out of his hips is what gives him that power, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, there was another, Parker was talking about how, his hero growing up was Bobby Martinez. And I was watching a clip of Bobby Martinez and his front side carves. And he doesn't do the arm thing either, but the way he swivels his hips on his front
Exactly.
side
Yeah.
carves, it's like, it's crazy. And like he does it so quick, and it's like it becomes like such a powerful turn. And he doesn't, some surfers will like really extend on that back foot. He doesn't even really, I guess he's just in a really tight transition. So he he isn't able to fully extend it, but he just like flips his hips over and then it just creates so much torque and it looks so sick. And I'm like, damn.
And he makes it look so easy too. That's like, that's such a frustrating thing sometimes. Like these guys, it looks like they're just cruising, but
Yeah,
it's all about the hips. Yeah.
right. And it's interesting. I think something that's really interesting about what you were saying there as well is just the mental challenge, because you're like an incredible surfer, right? Like everybody knows that you're an incredible surfer, but it's so funny to hear that someone at your level is still like, oh man, I was so bummed, and you're getting down on yourself because you're surfing. I
Oh,
guess it
all the
never
time.
ends.
Yeah. No, it never ends. It's a constant. Maybe I experience it more than others, but I'm pretty sure most surfers have that where it's like, yeah, people say that about your surfing. You watch your surfing, it's almost you're focused on that little thing you want to change, and then all of a sudden you think you're just a terrible surfer, and you're just like, I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to post anything until I fix this. And I go through that. I go through that a lot, but I think at the same time, it's made me a better surfer. It's like you don't want to settle. There's always
Right.
something. You're always working on your sort of weakest link,
For
and I'm
sure.
sure a lot of surfers, even at the very highest levels, can relate to that. And that's it's been really cool. I'm super lucky to have my best friends are incredible surfers. Like I was saying, Cody Young, one of my best friends, Logan Bedemal, a really underrated surfer that is, I think he's one of the best surfers on Maui. Ian Gentile, obviously tour surfer. Imai DeVault. These are the guys that I'm around, and when I'm surfing with them, I feel like I'm not a good surfer at all. I feel like a novice just because they're such a high level.
Right.
But it's made me sort of try my best. Even if I could get a little closer to their level, that means I'm making a big improvement. So that's like a huge tip for me is if you surf with surfers that are a lot better than you, you're just going to slowly rise up in your own level too. So that's been a huge
Right.
thing I've been really grateful for is having friends like that. And of course, my brother has insane technique. He has perfect technique, I think, and that's the Doug Silva influence, I think.
Right, right, for sure. Well, yeah, it must be. I was reading this book. I forget exactly what it was about, but it was like they were studying, like, for example, there was like, I don't know, some small random town that produced like the world's best ping pong players in all the
Mm.
US or something like that. And they were trying to figure out like why they all got so good. And it was like a lot of it was just proximity to other super high achievers. And so like being in that group and being surrounded by them, I'm sure is like a big part of that, right? Because you guys just constantly push each other and whatnot. And so I would imagine that that would be a big part of it.
Yeah,
And you,
it's been a really cool thing. That's what's happened on Maui. I think with our generation is that in this pipe event, there was more Maui surfers than there were Oahu surfers,
Hmm,
which I don't think has ever happened.
well,
Eli Hanneman's from Maui. Jackson Bunch is everyone's saying is the next big thing. He's doing flips on every wave, and it's this really cool. It's almost like the new momentum generation in a way. It's these group of
wow.
friends that have really pushed each other to a really really high level, and it's sick to see them all finally on tour. Taking down some of the best in the world. So yeah, you're totally right. I feel like if it was just one of them, they wouldn't have gotten to that same level. It's just the group effort. It seems that it really raised everybody's level to that, really, really high echelon.
Right. And when you start feeling down on yourself, you can always be like, well, you guys are just doing like kid stuff in small baby ways, right? Let's see you come paddle out at Jaws. Let's see how you feel in that situation, right?
I've been trying to get them to come out, and I know they would be insane once they come out there because the best small wave surfers always end up instantly being really good in big waves. It's
Right.
that's why Tori Meister's as good as he is. Ian Walsh, there's such a good overlap. But yeah, I think once those guys sort of get their competitive juices out, I think you're going to see all of them coming out to Jaws, and that's going to be really fun.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds sick. Well, so was there anything, you talked about how you're doing this rebuild. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I was talking to Philippe Malbeau, who coached Kanoa Igarashi when he was going through a rebuild. Because, he talked about the same thing, how he's like, trying to do a rebuild. I'm expecting my performance is actually going to be worse before it gets better. I'm experimenting with new boards, and they spent like, I don't know, a couple of weeks just focusing on the front side carve and just like getting super detailed.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
just, like, were there any other aspects of your technique where you're like, oh, I want to improve this or that, or anything that was holding you back?
I think a big thing I'm still working on is my bottom turn and figuring out how to stay really low through the bottom turn, just bending with my knees and keeping my back more at an upright posture. The last thing you want to do is hinge at the hips. If your waist is hinged and your legs are pretty extended, you're missing out on a crazy amount of power. So if you could figure out how to get that rotation off the bottom while still staying low with your knees, that's a hard thing to do. And I think that's why you see some guys, they'll be bending their knees low. And a good example of this is Cade Matson. He's like, does a really noticeable version of this where his back is really arched and he twists it and just gets so much torque while still staying low. And that's why he can have so much power off the top. So that's something I'm working on too, is being a little bit more engaged off the bottom turn. And my main focus of doing that is to be able to do bigger turns and big waves on the toe board, because you really need to conserve a lot of power to cover a lot of ground up a big wave. So that's the other. So that rotation thing on the front side carve, and then getting more power to the bottom turn. That's like the two things I really am focused on at this point. And I feel like if I get that down, I'll be at I think it'll take me to the next level. I hope. We'll see.
That's fascinating. Oh, so yeah, I was going to ask you like, what was like the impetus for, this renewed focus on small wave surfing, but it sounds like that's because you want to take it to the big waves, right?
Oh,
And so,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Because the only way to do big turns at Jaws on the toe board is to have really, really good technique.
yeah,
Otherwise, it's impossible. So yeah, it's almost the small wave thing for me. I'm not trying to get on the QS or do anything like that. It's more a hobby, but it has real big implications in the big wave side of things. So that's like sort of my focus with it. I mean, the
wow,
goal is to be doing, shortboard style turns on big waves, and you see Kai doing a lot of that, and that's sort of the path I'd like to take too.
wow. So you're going to be putting John's carves at, Margaret River to shame when you're on a 20-foot wave.
Oh my gosh, I can't even. Kai and I have been wanting to see him get on a toe board at Jaws and do some of those turns. It'd be unbelievable.
Oh
It'd
my,
be so sick.
dude, what? Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine doing like a massive carve on like that kind of canvas. I mean, you'd like, I'm sure that is like the goal, but like, and you guys are like trying to figure it out, but like, and I'm sure it's like this dream, but like, do you guys feel like this is like, oh, this is attainable? Like, oh, we're gonna do this, because like you don't see people doing that at Jaws, like,
No, I mean, I think it's a mix of also the equipment. I think a board can only handle so much pressure, um, as they are right now, especially going through chop too. And Kai's doing a lot of experimentation on his toe boards at this time and stuff I don't even fully understand, but I'm hoping once he figures it out, I can get on it too. But that's a huge part of it. And then yeah, just really dialing in the technique and the amount of pressure on your legs too. Your quads have to be pretty built up to handle that sort of load. And I mean, it's scary too, is if you mess up, you get really smoked, and putting that much energy into the turn too, and then falling, you're going to be really out of breath. So it's a little bit of that too. You really don't want to fall, but you also want to push it. So it's a balance.
Oh man. Yeah, that sounds trippy. I mean, what is it like having your brother as your tow partner? Like you just got the beating of your life and then it's like your own brother coming to save your ass. Like that must be a pretty good feeling, right?
Yeah, it's really comforting knowing that. He'll put me in the scariest position of my life. It's so funny, like my first years at Jaws, I've always been pretty scared of big waves, so I kind of wanted to ease into it. I knew I wanted to do it, but just getting over that fear. And with him, it was almost trial by fire. If
Yeah.
he sees that a wave's gonna be barreling, he's gonna tow you in super deep, and the only way to make the wave is to get barreled. And it was like that from session one. There was no easy way to, so it's terrifying
Oh
those
man.
first few years, because it was like, if the giant biggest wave is coming and it looks terrifying, I'm going no matter what with him. But at the same time, he was so good at placing me on the wave is that I made a ton of waves. I barely fell the first few years I was out there, where I was just trying to survive it, not necessarily trying to push things with the barrels and the turns. But it is comforting knowing that if I fall, I have the most capable guy to come save me. And our water safety crew is
Right,
insane
right.
too. Ola Kernan has saved me countless times. Um, but yeah, just having my brother, I think I was able to skip a lot of steps that would have taken me a long time to figure out on my own by trial and error. There's
Oh,
so many times where I catch a wave and out the back, he's like, "No, don't do this on your bottom turn. Go up higher," and little tips like that that were just so game changing. And I'm like, oh, I would have never. I mean, I would have taken as long as maybe it took him to figure it out. And he was surfing Jaws for 10 years before I went out there.
right,
So
right.
I feel like in a very short amount of time, he was able to get me to to my highest potential, which was I'm so grateful for. I wouldn't enjoy being out there if it wasn't with him, I think.
Yeah. Oh man, that must be fun. I I just can't imagine being in those kinds of situations. And then, my brother and I are, pretty close and we'll do gnarly stuff. We like ice climb in addition to surfing, but like it's still a different thing, I would imagine. Like, because with climbing, it's like there's the fear of something bad happening, but like usually nothing bad happens. I mean, but with surfing, like every time you eat it on a wave, it's just like, you never know what's going to happen, and
Yeah,
those
yeah.
situations make you so close. That must be insane. Um, so you mentioned as well that there's like three waves of your life. I think so. One was that one barrel at Piahi at Jaws. The other one was that double barrel. What was the third one? Is it that paddle wave?
Yeah, that paddle when I was describing where the board went over me. And
Oh,
it wasn't, I didn't, I mean, I made the barrel just not on my board. I body surfed out of it and got smoked. But I think it was a huge mental block for me,
mm,
was like feeling like I was capable of pulling into a big barrel paddling in. I've done it towing, but it's almost, that's how you prove yourself as a big wave surfer. I feel like that's just the pinnacle if you get barreled at Jaws, because it just takes so much commitment. It's a really steep drop. You have to really knife it off the bottom turn. And I
right,
just hadn't quite gotten the opportunity to try it in my years of paddling out there. And finally it came together and it happened really naturally. And I feel like I could just go into autopilot, and it just, everything came together in that way to get me in that position inside the barrel. And
right,
that felt really good. And that gave me a ton of confidence. And um, to be able to be like, okay, I know what to expect now. I know what that wave looks like. So in that way, I think it's one of the more important ways in my life. I hope I get better ones where I actually ride out into the channel with the spit.
right.
But I think that's always going to be a really important wave for me, and getting my confidence up there.
For sure. It's like that milestone in terms of like a stepping stone, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
probably gonna get the barrel of your life and then come out of that thing and then do the biggest carve at the end of that
That'd be
section.
sick. Ideally. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I was gonna ask because I was like, what your third one was, because I was gonna say, you mean it well, because I saw this clip of you like pulling into like a double overhead barrel, and then like you're like, this is gonna be the wave of my life, and then like two dudes drop in on you and they're
Oh
wearing like
yeah.
hoodies and helmets.
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh my god, how much of a
Yeah.
bummer was that?
I mean, it was a really crowded day at Lance's, right? And I think that's, to be expected. For every 10 waves you get, something like that probably is going to happen at least once. So I wasn't that freaked out about it. It was a good wave, and I think if I would have had a chance of making it and made it, it would have been a really good wave. Probably the better wave I got all summer, but it's just the reality of surfing in really crowded lineups. It's
Right,
going to
right, right.
happen, and if you go into it just I don't know. It's a bummer that there's surfers out there that don't really have the awareness, but I don't know. It doesn't help to get super worked up about it because it just seems like it's going to happen no matter what. So
Right.
it was still an amazing day, and I got a ton of fun waves that day. But I don't know. I try to not get frustrated over those things. It just doesn't really help you.
That's a very good Zen approach to it. I'm sure I would just be like, fuck, I would be pissed if that happened. That's insane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll work towards wrapping up. I got three last questions for you. What is your intention when you stand up on a wave? Not a wave at Jaws, but like, let's say a small wave. Like what goes through your mind when you stand up on a wave?
Typically, when I go into a session, I try to have like a mantra in mind that I'll just remind myself before I stand, because I feel like once you stand up on the wave, your brain kind of goes to more of that instinctual approach where it's hard to like consciously think about it. So as you're paddling in and standing up, say what I'm trying to change is getting low off the bottom. And my mantra is like, okay, get low, get low, get low as I'm dropping in. And I'll just try to sit my hips down, bend my knees. And I find that makes a big difference. And it definitely changes depending on what I'm working on. And I suppose sometimes I don't think of anything. I'm just mind's blank, just enjoying it, especially if it's a day where you're stressed about a ton of other stuff. It's
Yeah.
so nice just to go in the water and let go a bit and just go pure instinct and escape for a bit.
Yeah.
But if I am thinking about something, it's usually little tips that I tell myself before, and yeah, hoping it makes a difference.
That's so cool. I mean, it's so interesting that like, you're approaching it and you're just constantly trying to like learn and improve. And yeah, that's interesting. And so all right, second question, which is what is if you had to surf the same wave for the rest of your life, what would it be? And what size would it be as well?
Hmm. Gosh, that's a really good question. For the rest of my life, probably wouldn't want to pick something too big. Um, Gosh, Lance's right was the most perfect wave ever. I can't imagine a wave being more perfect than that. I'd have to choose, yeah, double overhead Lances. I
Nice.
don't think it gets any better than that, especially because you could be probably 70 years old and all you got to do is stand there and you get drained.
Oh
You don't
my
even have to
God.
turn, which would be great. Yeah, so I think I'll go with that one. Yeah.
Dream wave. What
Yeah.
what uh what board would you ride there?
Probably something a little longer, like a 6'2". Just
Okay.
glide into waves. And especially you're just getting barreled. You just get way up on it. Gives you a lot of options. It's the longer board, more straight rail line. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, any last words or shout outs or anything?
No, I'm super stoked to be on here. It's cool, seeing your other episodes. I feel like I'm in good company with some legends. So really grateful to be on here, and I feel like I'm very still early on my journey of surfing, but hopefully somebody takes something out of this conversation that might help them. So yeah, I'm stoked.
Oh, for sure. I've learned so much. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.